Got it. Alright. Ahoy! So you know how some apartments have water leaks? Well, I envy them because my apartment is having a snow leak. I just got off the phone with a plumber. He told me to go downstairs and check my pipes. Oh, God! Oh my God! Hello? I found the cause. It's Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero. What? You had a feeling? I have to beat this game? I don't want to play it. It's terrible. It kicks off the dark age of Mortal Kombat. Yes, I want it to stop snowing in my apartment. Fine, I'll do it. Christ. It was 1996 and Midway was coming off the high from the year of Mortal Kombat, an uber successful trilogy of games in the arcades and consoles that also had shows and movies grossing millions. It was a great time to be a Mortal Kombat fan, but after every high there comes an off, and with Mortal Kombat, that was 1997. Ed Boon and John Tobias decided to split up for the next step in the series. While Ed Boon went on to lead the production of the next main installment into the franchise, Mortal Kombat 4, Tobias instead wanted to start a spin-off action-adventure series that would explore the backstories of individual Mortal Kombat characters, starting with Sub-Zero. And no, not the current Sub-Zero, but the OG Sub-Z from Mortal Kombat 1. Not that one. Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero was in development for 14 months and then released on October 1st, 1997 for PlayStation and in December for Nintendo 64. It ended up being a huge success, which is how it spawned the rest of the MK Mythology series. Yeah, you would have thought. This game is pretty bad. Mortal Kombat Mythologies was very divisive when it released, but as time passes on, it gets looked at more negatively and negatively. Gosh, I'm not looking forward to this. But I do have to try to fix this problem in my apartment. So, let's give it a go. Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero is of course a prequel not only to all the Mortal Kombat games that preceded it, but it is also a game that would set up the story of Mortal Kombat 4, which was the plan all along for Tobias and Boon, and why characters that made their playable debut in Mortal Kombat 4 actually debuted in this game like Shinnok, Quan Chi, and Fujin. The story here is that Sub-Zero is employed by the sorcerer Quan Chi to retrieve an amulet by fighting his way through a bunch of elemental temples and defeating the respective gods. And when Sub-Zero finally does reach the amulet, it is stolen by Quan Chi, who reveals that the amulet in question is the fallen elder god Shinnok's amulet, and together they plan to destroy everything. Raiden with a Y appears and then tasks Sub-Zero with fixing his whoopsie poopsie and stop Quan Chi and Shinnok. Now on PlayStation, the story is given to us with these cutscenes that were full-on videos portrayed by actors in front of tons of green screens. Now the silliness of the cutscenes, i.e. the drastic movements, the dialogue, the acting, and sometimes wonky costumes, were something that a lot of critics panned when talking about this game. But it's weird because at the same time, they call the PlayStation version better than Nintendo 64 due to the fact that it had the original cutscenes while the 64 had the still images. So you like it better because it had something you hated? That's dumb. Critics are the worst. My take? I like the cutscenes. They are campy and have a very high school theater production vibe to them, which I enjoy. The entire time it seems like the actors were seconds away from bursting out laughing and it felt fun. Now I'm going to segue to talking about the visuals of the game because that is one of the very few positives I had to say about it. MK Mythologies Sub-Z is the last Mortal Kombat game to use digitized actors for the fighter sprites, and what a way to die off. Rest in peace. So all the characters are portrayed by actors, but the stages and backgrounds are all made using real-time 3D. And I'll say this, though it was probably outdated at the time, I think the game looks good. I just think it's stuck in the middle between being a game that would have looked incredible on the SNES, though too much for the hardware, yet lame compared to other games on the 64. And that's all the praises I have. The gameplay of Mortal Kombat Mythologies is someone playing Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 and thinking, yeah, I can make a platformer out of this. No the f you cannot. This is a side-scrolling action-adventure that has you dodge booby traps, beat up monks, and finding keys to access other doors. The controls are the same as any other Mortal Kombat game. We have our 4 attacks, the direction pad does the same as it does, run and block, and the joystick in the middle also acts as a movement, but it automatically runs. There are 2 more buttons. A is for picking up items like healers, keys, etc., and B is for turning around. In old MK games, you never had to worry about turning around because you always automatically flip depending on where your opponent is. Here though, if you jump at your opponent and overshoot it and end up behind them, if you try to attack, you'll end up punching the air and you can't press back because that'll just make you walk backwards towards them. Nope, you gotta press the B button and then attacking, which is just so clunky, and it gets worse if you're ever surrounded. It doesn't feel good to use this at all. I don't see why they couldn't use this button to lock on, lock off enemies and just have Sub-Zero turn automatically. Now when it comes to running, we don't have a stamina meter, so we can just keep going non-stop. Instead, we have an ice bar that limits how much of Sub-Zero's ice attacks we're able to use. His special moves again require button combos, and you unlock the special moves by gaining XP via comboing. I like this RPG element of the game, but the combat encounters themselves, they are really repetitive. Most of the time you're fighting these bald monks that occasionally bring weapons that you can easily knock out of their hand with one attack. It just gets so repetitive so quick, and at some point I just started running and jumping over most enemies. Now how about the platforming? Good God almighty, Jesus and Mary and that f***ing goat, the platforming in this game is f***ing abysmal! So jumping in the game is horrible. It's stiff, unresponsive, and unpredictable. It's not like other platformers where you feel like you are in control. Instead, anytime you take a leap of faith, I get the urge to drop to my knees and pray that it works. It's so unnatural, and the game has so much random bullshit at times, it was miserable. Now let me segue into another side note. You know how some people have odd little annoying habits that we sometimes don't pick up on until someone points it out to us and then we can't stop focusing on it and it starts to bother you? Well, first off, f*** that person, and second off, f*** Mortal Kombat Mythologies for making me realize that the Nintendo 64 has a really bad controller. I've spent years trying to defend this thing that the entire gaming community goes after, but now, I get it. Playing on it, holding it like a traditional controller compared to the standard way, hurts. Because the way the controller is shaped, complemented with you trying your best to have some sort of control over Sub-Zero in intense platforming moments, cause my hand to constantly cramp. Also, add to that either the controller not responding to jump inputs or just deciding to have a mind of its own and cause me to randomly jump into a f***ing pit, made the game a piss to play most of the time.
What did I ever do to you? First you tried to take my home and now my love for the 64?
So let's get to the levels. The first was a raid on a Shaolin temple looking for a map to the 4 element temples. It's a standard level, teaches us the basics of the game like platforming, combat, and bullshit. It ends with a battle against Scorpion, who was also sent by Quan Chi to get the map. This here is the origin of the rivalry that would define the series. The next 4 levels are all temples for the elements: water, earth, fire, air. Long ago, the 4 nations lived together and, we start with the Wind Temple, which was a real nightmare of tightly timed jumps. These rotating platforms not only had a small plank to land on, but it also had a narrow window on when you can land on them. I killed a whole f***ing hour in the Air Temple, losing many lives and many continues. It ends with a battle against Fujin, the wind god who makes his debut here. Now, with the boss battles in the game, they can range from pushovers to actual challenges to complete utter f***ing nonsense. Fujin was f***ing nonsense because he would always be in the air and constantly floating away from you. The next level was the Earth Temple. Now, where the Wind Temple was a nightmare of platforming and death pits, the Earth Temple was a nightmare of booby traps and death pits. The game constantly had these cracks randomly opening up that sometimes were hard to see. These pits were sometimes death, but there were a few that housed either goodies or progress, which was a great and annoying way to burn through your lives, checking all these pits. This was another miserable temple experience. The boss battle I actually enjoyed and thought was creative. You had to lure him to the middle and pull a lever to drop the ceiling on him, and to get to the other side of the Earth God you had to use Sub-Zero's slide between the legs. It's pretty cool. The water temple I was ready to hate right off the bat because nobody likes water levels. It was a maze of pipes that go in many directions with some leading to dead ends. Game developers, please, if you're ever making a water-based level, don't make it a f***ing maze! I was expecting to have this be the lowest of the low, but actually, the water temple was something I'd actually call enjoyable. For one, I started drawing a map and marked keys and doors and used the dice to track my progress. That kind of brought a real fun, adventure-y aspect, making a map and following it. Plus, I got to enjoy the soundtrack a bit, which I think Mortal Kombat Mythologies knocks it out of the park with. It had a very Zelda dungeony vibe.
And I'm gonna be honest, there's a bit of bias here because I love anything that has to do with the 4 elements. Though one part I loved about Tomb Raider Angel of Darkness was when you entered the temples and had to solve challenges for each of the elements. Now usually I do tend to show gameplay footage of what I'm talking about, but that would mean I have to play the rest of the game to get to it. So just take my word for it. If you know, you know. Whoa, wait a minute. Am I talking positively about Mortal Kombat Mythologies?
Ew, no, I gotta find something to complain about. Checkpoints are in the game, which I appreciate, but the game has them placed in some very inconvenient spots. They are far and few in between, meaning if you go through an annoying sequence or enemy encounters and then die on the next platform, then you'll have to do that annoying sequence or enemy encounter again. The Earth Temple, I want to give a special shout out for placing a checkpoint right before a long rope climb, meaning when I die at the top due to some bullshit, because it's Mortal Kombat, it's gonna be bullshit, I'll have to climb that rope again.
Thanks.
The Water Temple has 2 occasions where you gotta go from one side of the maze to another with no checkpoint in between, meaning if you slip at some point during the long trek, you're gonna be doing it again and again and again. That was annoying and turned a level I had enjoyment in into a level that I hated.
There we go. That's more like it. Mortal Kombat Mythologies is a game that has some cool ideas, but ends up fumbling the execution.
The Fire Temple I thought would be the worst of the worst, but no, I was actually able to breeze through it and run over most things. The biggest danger was floors that burned your feet, but it didn't do too much to be anything to be concerned about. And the boss battle was just right. When we finally defeat him, Sub-Zero reaches the amulet, but then it's taken by Quan Chi, who escapes to the Netherrealm, and then Raiden with a Y appears to scold Sub-Zero and orders him into the Netherrealm. Sub-Zero goes and...
Huh?
I was denied access to the Netherrealm? Try again on a harder difficulty?
What the f is this shit?
Wow, so I've heard of games of a generation prior that used to give you half endings that would encourage you to try to beat the game on a higher difficulty to get a better ending. But I have never seen one that does in the middle of the game! Up to this point I've been playing the game on easy because it's Mortal Kombat, you have to. To progress to the second half of the game, you have to be playing on at least medium difficulty, which makes enemies harder and limits your lives.
I'm not playing the entire game again. The Earth and Wind Temples have already shaved enough years off my hairline.
Well, here's the thing. Anytime you beat a level, the game offers save itself in your controller pack. But if you don't have one, like me, it'll give you a password to access certain levels.
Well, I'll be. The game has passwords? That's great! Rather than have to redo anything I already did, I can just go online, look up passwords for the future levels, and boom, let's go!
So the Netherrealm introduces these new enemies with these blasters and has even more annoying platforming and grueling traps. I couldn't beat the game here. Not only could I just not figure out what the game wants me to do at times, but the enemies are more of a handful and more of this game's bullshit rears its ugly head. You have to beat enemies till they die for them to leave you alone.
Okay, that statement sounds obvious, so let me break it down. To defeat enemies, you have to fully beat them with your fists until their health bar is gone.
The game doesn't reward you for taking other conventional ways of dealing with foes. Anytime you lure them into a trap or knock them off the platform, sure, they are gone now, but then, like in the original Ninja Turtles games, they all come back to life. The game doesn't let you cheese it. The most egregious example is how the last Sub-Zero special move you unlock is being able to freeze your opponents, hit them with a second ice blast, and then shatter them into pieces. Hell yeah, what a callback! It's a really cool move and an easier way to handle enemies. But you turn around and they are back! That's stupid! Why would I use this then? That's such garbage. The enemies can cheese me, but I can't cheese them? If you try to ice blast someone, if they aren't on screen, it won't work. But an enemy that's 2 screens and a long jump away can launch 50 projectiles at me? I can't make any progress because I have to beat enemies without any clever tactics, but all these enemies are Mortal Kombat 1, not that one, levels of nonsense. No! I refuse! I am not doing this! Fuck Sub-Zero, fuck Quan Chi, fuck Shinnok, and fuck this game.
Now listen, I usually hate not finishing games, but this is an exception I'm willing to make. Now you listen here. Technically, I did beat you. Every Mortal Kombat up to this point shows a game over after a successful tournament, and that's what happened with you. I played the game on easy and beat the game on easy and got the game over screen. I will just write off that you are a shorter game, the easier the difficulty. So with that, I beat you. Holy shit, it worked!
Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero is a bad game. It had some really interesting ideas, but jumbled it with awful platforming, terrible controls, repetitive combat, and horrible game design. And it's crazy to me that in the dark age of Mortal Kombat, it gets worse!
This was the first Mortal Kombat game that was truly bad. The franchise that seemed to be an unstoppable juggernaut had its first misstep and kicked off an era of bad for Mortal Kombat that would last until 2011. Whoa! I beat the game! Why is it still snowing? Oh Christ, it's spreading! Hey, it's spreading! There's even more of them! It's worse than you thought! It can't be stopped? I have to leave my apartment. Goodbye, my first apartment. It's been fun.
I just wanted to pinch their cheeks at my own expense. Like the SNES wouldn't have been able to handle all the scorpions on screen. I know I can't. Oh shit, they started a fire.
Resist the banana! Oh. Oh, come on!
One bad up can get you killed. And what the fuck, I died?
My name's Valbos. Actually, no, it wasn't.